The hearing of a case challenging the implementation of the recent teachers' pay hike is on at the Supreme Court. The court is expected to determine whether the award to teachers by the Industrial Court shall be implemented or not. The government moved to the Supreme Court after losing an appeal challenging the decision. And we're now joined by our Patrick Amimo, who has been following those proceedings at the Supreme Court for an update. Patrick, thank you very much for joining us. You can tell us what has been happening since the proceedings began early in the morning.
Thank you, Betty. Indeed, this is a historic case here filed at the Supreme Court, where now 5 judges of the Supreme Court are listening to submissions from both the government side and the teachers' unions. Already in the morning, the government side, represented by the TSC, the Attorney General's Office, and the Salaries and Remunerations Commission lawyers did move a petition seeking, trying to convince the Supreme Court judges to set aside the Court of Appeal ruling, which upheld that TSC should pay teachers between 50 to 60% of their basic salary. Remember, this order came from the Labor Relations Court after it studied a letter from the TSC, which had proposed that teachers should be paid, it was able to pay teachers between 50 to 60% to be spread in 4 years. So the TSC later appealed after it went to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal appealed that judgment from the Labor Relations Court. That's when the matter ended up at the Supreme Court. And here early in the morning, lawyers from the government side, that is AG office, the TSC and SRC, argued trying to convince the Supreme Court judges to set aside that order in order to allow TSC not to pay teachers the 50 to 60% increment. But later in the afternoon, and even as I'm talking now, lawyers representing teachers are still making their submissions before the Supreme Court judges, trying to convince them not to entertain entertain that appeal from the TSC, because they say they have no their case is not holding any substance. And already lawyer Paul Mwite and Kilukumi are agreed that the former TSC boss George Legoiboni had written a letter indicating that TSC was willing to pay between 50 to 60% basic salary to be spread in 4 years, according to the collective bargain agreement that had been agreed. And this memorandum was deposited at the Labor Relations Court. So the Labor Relations Court went with what TSC had said was able to offer. So the lawyers have said that this matter, the Supreme Court judges should not let down teachers, but should go ahead and allow teachers to enjoy these the 50 to 60% increment, because according to lawyer Mwite, the money that will be given is a 12.5% increment spread over 4 years to come to add up to 60%. And he says, as the government side says, it cannot pay 73 billion shillings, but lawyer Mwite says that money, we should not look in terms of billions, but how much each individual teacher will earn. And they say the lowest paid teacher is going to earn about 8,000 shillings, and according to lawyer Paul Mwite, this is peanuts. So he says the government should not come up with the argument of billions to scare the Supreme Court judges, but the judges should look at what each individual teacher will get out of this money, which according to him each year will be 12.5% increment to each teacher. Betty?
I mean, well, thank you for that. But, before I let you go, Wilson Sossion had mentioned that, no matter the outcome of this particular ruling today, they will still call for a strike. Do we know if this stance is still the same, or has it changed? Have you been able to get any information in regards to that?
Indeed, we are yet to get word from the KNUT Secretary General Wilson Sossion, who came up with threatened. And remember, also KUPPET have also issued similar threats, warning of strike if the August pay for teachers, if the salary will not be reflected in the August pay. So it is a matter that is still pending, awaiting the outcome of these particular submissions here today. But if I can bring you up to speed, is that lawyer Kyoko Kilukumi has told the Supreme Court judges to look soberly at this particular matter and not frustrate teachers, because according to him, he says that this is a matter that the TSC had agreed that it was willing to pay, and after comparative analysis across the region and what teachers were getting, and the TSC had offered to pay the 50 to 60%. So he says that the Supreme Court judges should not be swayed by arguments from the government side over these billions, and so he's just alluded to that strike threat. He says Kenya should not be looked at as a country that is prone to industrial disputes. So he's appealed to the Supreme Court judges to exercise their wisdom and ensure that teachers are paid, because after all, this money is going to benefit children. And according to him, he argues that there is no other better public interest, or better than to ensure that our children in public schools get an education. And if the teachers go on strike in September, then it means third term, which is a very critical term for those doing examinations, will be disrupted, and the entire education sector for the majority of Kenyan students. So his appeal to the Supreme Court judges to look soberly into this matter, which indicates maybe that strike threat is still waiting in the wings. But for that, for a clear indication, maybe after this session, that's when maybe Sosion might give the way forward.
From your assessment, Amimo, finally, do you think that ruling will be made today, with, how the debate is and the arguments are ongoing? Do you think that we'll have a debate today? A ruling.
What has happened is that we are having submissions from different lawyers, both the government side and those from the teachers. After the submissions, then the Supreme Court judges will have time to go sit down and digest arguments from both divides and later come up with a judgment or a ruling. This is not possible for today, given the voluminous documents that are being presented. You remember, the teacher side, like lawyer Fred Ngati, has a document of about 600 pages. The same obtains to teachers' union. They have documents worth over 600 pages. So these are things that the Supreme Court judges have to peruse through these documents and listen to each party's arguments before they arrive at least an informed decision. So for today, I think it's not possible to make a ruling. Maybe if the Supreme Court judges will give a date on when they'll rule on this matter, which is very sensitive and close to the teachers' hearts across the country. Betty?
Right. Patrick Amimo, thank you very much for the details. He's coming to us from the Supreme Court, where the hearing of a case challenging the implementation of the recent teachers' pay hike is on at that particular court. Of course, he says that, the lawyers representing the government saying that, the government does not have 73 billion shillings now, so it's very hard and difficult for that to happen. But of course, the other side that is representing the teachers saying that, 73 billion is not a lot of money, comparing and considering that, when you get to the numbers, that the teachers will get as little as 8,000 after that particular increment. Well, we are going to be continuing to hear what is happening there. Patrick Amimo is going to join us, obviously, this afternoon, even as we get to the ruling of that particular landmark case, like he mentioned.